Welcome, deep divers. Today, we're pulling together a really interesting mix of sources, articles, speeches, even some philosophy. That might seem pretty different at first glance.
Right.
But we're going to dig in, find those, real gems of wisdom. Our goal is always to pull out those deep insights and make these sometimes complex ideas feel relevant, maybe even practical for your own life.
Absolutely.
And the big question driving us today, I think it's one we all grapple with sometimes. What if the answers we're looking for, or, the opportunities we really want, aren't way out there somewhere? What if they're hidden in plain sight, like right where we are right now? It's a pretty powerful thought, isn't it? That maybe the solutions are closer than we think.
That's exactly the thread we're pulling on today. This deep dive is going to look at how different people, different communities throughout history, really, have navigated some huge challenges. How they found purpose, how they managed to drive change, often by tapping into something deep inside, real conviction, and also by getting really good at persuasion, connecting with people.
Okay.
And importantly, by facing up to some big societal divides. And the common theme, it often comes back to recognizing these, acres of diamonds right in their own backyard, so to speak.
Acres of diamonds.
Yeah, we'll unpack that. We're looking for those universal principles, resilience, human effort, the power of really communicating effectively, even when you're dealing with stuff that seems completely stuck. It's about realizing that the resources we often ignore, both inside us and around us, might just be our biggest assets.
Okay, so let's unpack that acres of diamonds. It feels a bit counterintuitive, right? We're sort of trained to look outwards, always chasing the next thing, the faraway opportunity.
Exactly.
Tell us about this famous story, the parable of Ali Hafed. How does that really zero in on this tendency we have?
Well, it's such a foundational story, and Russell H. Conwell really brought it to life in his lecture. So Ali Hafed, as Conwell tells it, was this prosperous farmer, lived near the river Indus, had amazing land, fertile, abundant, everything you could seemingly want.
Sounds ideal.
Totally. But he was restless. He hears these stories from an old guide about diamonds, incredible wealth found in distant lands. And this idea just consumes him.
The grass is always greener.
Pretty much. He gets convinced that real fortune is somewhere else, far away.
Yeah.
So he does this drastic thing, sells his thriving farm, leaves his family, and just takes off on this massive years-long quest for diamonds.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he searches everywhere, Palestine, Persia, chasing these diamond fields that are always just over the horizon, but, finds nothing.
Of course.
He ends up broke, his health fails, and just consumed by despair, tragically, he dies alone. Suicide, actually. Never found a thing.
That's grim. But there's a twist, right?
The ultimate irony. Back on the farm he sold, the new owner is just digging potatoes one day, and bam! Hits this big block of native silver.
No way.
And then, soon after, in the stream that ran right through Ali Hafed's old land, they start finding these incredible diamonds, some of the best ever discovered. Literally acres of diamonds beneath his feet the whole time.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. Conwell's point isn't about geology, obviously. It's this, searing look at how we overlook the value right in front of us, always looking far away, blinding ourselves to the wealth in the ordinary, the local.
That's a powerful, almost tragic metaphor.
Yeah.
And it's not just some ancient story, is it? You mentioned Conwell shares another anecdote, and this one involved somebody you'd think would be the last person to miss something like that.
Yeah.
A mineralogy professor.
Exactly. The irony here is just, perfect. This professor, a guy who literally studied rocks and minerals for a living, lived on his farm in Massachusetts for years, but he falls into the same trap. Sells his farm for not much money, probably thought it was just ordinary land. What he never realized, or maybe just never looked closely enough at in his day-to-day life, was that he'd been born, raised, and probably sat on countless times, a big block of native silver 8 inches square embedded right in his own stone wall by the gate.
You're kidding. A mineralogy professor.
Right. It just drives home how deeply buried these opportunities can be, even for the experts. He's looking for value in books, maybe in distant mines, while real tangible wealth was literally part of his fence. It makes you think how our assumptions, even our expertise, can sometimes blind us.
It really makes you wonder how many blocks of silver or, acres of diamonds we walk past every single day. And Conwell really ties this to business and serving the community, doesn't he? He even uses a personal story, a regret from his youth.
He does, and it's quite a frank admission. He talks about helping out in his father's country store when he was young, and people kept coming in asking for jackknives. And every time, he just blew them off. didn't bother stalking them, saw it as a hassle, not an opportunity.
Ah, I can see where this is going.
Right. It wasn't until later in life he had this big realization. He said, the foundation of godliness and the foundation principles of success in business are both the same precisely.
Interesting phrasing. What did he mean by that?
Well, he clarifies. He meant that real ethical success, whether spiritual or commercial, comes from understanding and actually meeting the needs of others. If he'd approached the store with a, Christian plan or just a plan of genuine service, he would have had those jackknives ready.
Right. Basic supply and demand.
Exactly. The wealth wasn't in some fancy invention. It was in providing what people were literally asking for within the sound of your voice, as he put it. It's about service. Serving people by meeting their needs isn't just nice. It's the most direct, ethical way to succeed.
That's a really profound link, isn't it? Business success and, well, a kind of moral purpose being deeply connected. And then there's that amazing story, the one about the poor man in Hingham, Massachusetts. That seems to capture it perfectly.
Oh, this is a fantastic example. Almost sounds like a fairy tale, but Conwell says it happened in his time.
This guy, really poor, in Hingham, Massachusetts, was out of work, had absolutely nothing. No capital, just a penknife.
Okay, just a penknife.
His wife basically tells him, do something. So he sits down by the bay, starts whittling a piece of wet shingle into like a little wooden chain.
Simple enough.
His kids see it, start fighting over this simple toy. So he makes another. Then a neighbor sees him, sees the kid's reaction, and says, hey, you should make toys and sell them.
Ah, the spark.
Yeah, and when the man asks what kind of toys, the neighbor gives brilliant advice. Ask your own children.
Right.
So he does. And they want a doll's bed, a washstand, a little carriage, an umbrella. Simple things. He couldn't afford proper wood, so he used firewood scraps. And from this incredibly humble start, just making basic, unpainted wooden toys based on what his own kids and community actually wanted, the business just takes off.
Wow.
This tiny beginning, born from just observing and responding to real needs, grew into a multi-million-dollar business. Made him, apparently, the richest man in Massachusetts at the time. It just powerfully proves Conwell's point. If you know what people need, you have gotten more knowledge of a fortune than any amount of capital can give you.
That's incredible.
It's about looking around you, finding those simple unmet needs, starting with whatever you have and just genuinely responding. The diamond was right there in his own family.
So it really isn't about waiting for some lightning bolt idea. It's more about this active, almost empathetic looking around. Really seeing the wealth right within the sound of your voice, like Conwell said. The needs, the resources we overlook instead of always gazing off at the horizon.
Precisely. And this whole idea of wealth then pivots quite naturally from just money to something deeper. Inner wealth, the wealth of character. Conwell makes this claim, and it might sound controversial today, maybe a bit jarring. He asserted that 98 out of 100 of the rich men of America are honest. That is why they are rich.
Yeah, that definitely raises eyebrows now. 98% honest.
Right. And look, his point wasn't to say all rich people are saints. He was pushing back against this sort of automatic prejudice against wealth itself. He argued that sustained, legitimate success, the kind that builds lasting companies, employs people, earns trust over time, that kind of success usually has to be built on integrity.
Okay, so not necessarily overnight fortunes, but enduring ones.
Exactly. He believed you can make a quick buck dishonestly, sure, but true. Lasting riches often came from serving others faithfully, honestly. It wasn't just about the money piled up, but about the character developed in the process, the reputation you build.
That's such a different take than you often hear today, linking integrity so directly to true wealth. But what's really fascinating is how this focus on, the inner foundation echoes some really old philosophical ideas. How does this connect with someone like Seneca, the Stoic?
It's a remarkable parallel, isn't it? Seneca, writing almost 2,000 years before Conwell, dives deep into this. In his letters, he basically tells us to really question what external possessions mean. He argues riches can be useless to the possessors as they were to the onlookers.
Useless. How so?
He means they're superficial. They don't define your actual worth. What really matters, Seneca says, isn't what you have, but who you are, your character, your inner peace, your contentment.
Right. The internal state.
Exactly. He famously advises, turn thyself rather to the true riches. Learn to be content with little and cry out with courage and with greatness of soul. We have water, we have porridge. Let us compete in happiness with Jupiter himself.
Wow. Compete with Jupiter with just porridge and water. That's a statement.
It's radical. True wealth for Seneca is the quality of your naked soul, its strength, its virtue. Not the fancy house, the servants, the pedestal of external stuff. That's all just temporary, like a costume. True wealth is what's inside, untouchable by fortune's ups and downs.
And this idea of finding strength, finding meaning internally, especially when things are really tough, that resonates so strongly with Viktor Frankl's experiences, doesn't it? Coming out of the Holocaust.
Absolutely. Frankl's work is maybe the most profound modern testament to this. Having lived through unimaginable horror, he saw with brutal clarity that he who has a WHY to live can bear almost any Hadopi.
The why, the purpose.
Precisely. He observed that the prisoners who lost hope, who lost their why, their sense of meaning, they were often the first to give up. Physically and mentally, their inner spirit broke.
Even if physically they were no worse off than others.
Right. So Frankl argued that the ultimate meaning in life often isn't found in achieving external goals or having possessions or even having kids in the conventional sense. It comes from the attitude we choose when facing challenges.
That freedom to choose your response.
Yes, that core human freedom. It's about cultivating an inner life, finding meaning in nature, art, love, memory. Even when everything external is stripped away, when all you have is your naked soul, as Seneca put it, finding purpose even in suffering itself.
And this isn't just about survival in extreme situations, is it? It sounds like it's also about growth, about becoming something more through the effort itself.
Exactly right. It's about transformation. Zig Ziglar, a more modern voice, captures this perfectly. Quote, "What you get by reaching your goals is not nearly as important as what you become by reaching them."
Ah, I like that. The journey, not just the destination.
It's the person you're forged into, the character, the resilience, the wisdom gained through the struggle. That's the real prize. Ziglar uses this great analogy. People say, strike while the iron is hot, which is fine advice.
Sure.
But he says, better advice, however, is to make the iron hot by striking.
Ooh, nice. Active, not passive.
Totally. It's not about waiting for opportunity. It's about the persistent effort, the striking that creates the heat, that develops your skills, refines your character. It's this continuous process of becoming something more, not just getting something more.
So what we're really seeing here, from Seneca's contentment to Frankl's why, Viglar's becoming.
Yeah.
It's not just nice philosophy. It feels like a practical strategy.
It really is.
It suggests the best investment isn't just in stocks or property, but in deliberately building up our character, our purpose, our resilience. Because when that's solid, then the external diamonds, the opportunities, they become not just possible, but maybe more sustainable, more meaningful. It's a fundamental shift, isn't it? Stop waiting for diamonds. Realize they're already here inside you or right around you, waiting to be uncovered through effort and redefining what wealth really means.
That's exactly. It's a perspective shift.
Okay, so once we start unearthing those inner diamonds, building that resilience, the next step often seems to be, how do we bring that out? How do we connect with others, influence our communities, maybe even lead?
Right. How do you translate that inner work into outward effect?
And what's amazing is that the ancient world, centuries ago, they had this incredibly sophisticated grasp of persuasion, didn't they?
Oh, absolutely. And their insights are still incredibly relevant. Take Aristotle. His rhetoric is fundamental. He defined rhetoric not just as persuading people, but as the ability to see the means of persuasion that are available on each matter.
Okay, see the means. So it's analytical.
Exactly. It's systematic. He breaks down the tools, like induction, using specific examples to build up to a general point. You want to argue a policy works, show specific cases where it did.
Makes sense.
And then there's syllogism, or what he often called enthymemes. Think of it like rhetorical logic. It's an argument where you might leave one premise unstated because it's common knowledge.
So the audience kind of fills in the blank.
Precisely. They feel like they reached the conclusion themselves. If I say, she's a great leader, she always listens, the unspoken bit is, great leaders listen. It guides their thinking subtly, makes it feel more natural, less like you're lecturing them.
But Plato, he had a more complex relationship with rhetoric, didn't he? Sometimes he seemed quite critical, like in Gorgias, comparing it to cookery, just flattering people without real substance.
He did. He was wary of rhetoric used just for manipulation, detached from truth. Like a chef making tasty but junk food it pleases, but doesn't nourish. He saw it as potentially dangerous pandering if it wasn't grounded in genuine knowledge.
But he also saw a higher potential for it. In Phaedrus, maybe?
Yes, exactly. That's the crucial other side. In Phaedrus, Plato envisions a true rhetoric. Its real function, he says, is to lead the soul.
Lead the soul. That sounds profound.
It is. This higher rhetoric requires deep knowledge of truth, understanding justice, goodness, human nature itself. It's not about winning arguments for sport, but about guiding people towards what's genuinely good for them, ethically and spiritually. It means understanding your audience, their souls, and using the right words in the right way, always serving truth.
So Aristotle gives us the toolkit, Plato gives us the ethical compass, perhaps, and then Quintilian, the Roman guy, he really got into the nuts and bolts of crafting a speech that actually moves people.
Quintilian was huge in Roman education. He called rhetoric the noblest and most sublime of tasks. He believed it was perfected by art, but rooted in our nature. He gave super detailed advice, especially on the exordium, the beginning of a speech. Crucial for grabbing attention.
How so?
He stressed you have to analyze everything, before whom, in whose defense, against whom, at what time and place, under what circumstances you're speaking, tailor the message precisely.
Know your audience, know your context.
Absolutely. And he emphasized using vivid descriptions to stir emotions. To make people cry, he said, describe a captured town in painful detail, the fires, the crashing buildings, the cries, mothers clutching children, make the horror appear near at hand.
Wow, so it's not just logic, it's about creating this visceral, emotional experience.
Exactly. Rhetoric as immersion.
And it wasn't all serious drama either, right? The ancients knew about humor too. Cicero, the great Roman orator, he talked about wit.
Oh, definitely. Cicero, in De Oratore, knew that decisions aren't just about logic. Emotions are key. He said the orator has the power to excite or sedate emotions, connect emotionally, and you achieve way more.
Makes sense.
And he loved the strategic use of wit and humor. It could engage the audience, disarm opponents, even subtly mock their arguments. But, and this is important, he drew a line between a true orator using humor with cause for a just purpose and just being a buffoon, getting laughs for laughs' sake. For Cicero, humor was a tool, always serving the larger goal, usually justice or truth, not just entertainment.
Okay, so we have these ancient frameworks for influence, for connecting logically and emotionally. But what does this look like today, beyond formal speeches? Because there's this deeply human part of connecting, isn't there? And it often takes real courage and openness.
This is exactly where someone like Brené Brown comes in, and her work feels like such a modern echo of that ancient idea of leading the soul. She argues really powerfully that vulnerability is the core, the heart, the center of meaningful human experiences.
Vulnerability.
Yeah.
Which so many of us see as weakness.
Right. And she flips that completely. She says it's the catalyst for courage, compassion, and connection. Her research found that this willingness to be vulnerable was the single clearest thing shared by what she calls wholehearted people.
Wholehearted people.
Yeah, people living these full, engaged lives, their success, their strong relationships, their proudest moments as parents. She connects it all back to their ability to embrace vulnerability, to show up authentically, flaws and all, even when it's scary, even with no guarantees. It's about letting yourself be truly seen.
And a big part of that, understanding vulnerability, is also tackling its opposite, or maybe it's shadow shame. Brown makes a really key distinction there between shame and guilt.
Yes, crucial distinction. It sounds subtle, but it's huge. Shame versus guilt is basically I am bad versus I did something bad.
Ah, okay. Self versus behavior.
Exactly. Guilt can be healthy. It focuses on behavior, motivates change, apologies, making things right. But shame is toxic. It focuses on the self. It's that horrible feeling that we are flawed, unworthy of love, of belonging. It's a social wound.
Social wound.
Yeah. And because it's social, the antidote is also social. Empathy. That's the social bomb. If you can share your vulnerability, your story with someone who truly responds with empathy, shame just can't survive in that space.
Wow.
And she adds that self-compassion is key too. Being kind to yourself, accepting your own imperfections, makes it easier to reach out and find that empathy you need.
And this isn't just about one-on-one relationships, is it? She talks about this playing out in bigger systems like work or school, disruptive engagement.
Right. Imagine a team meeting or a classroom. Instead of everyone avoiding the difficult topic, the leader bravely brings it up. Maybe it's a failure, a fear everyone feels but won't name.
That sounds uncomfortable.
It is uncomfortable. Productive discomfort, she calls it. But the point isn't just discomfort, it's starting honest conversations about vulnerability and shame. It rehumanizes these places. Avoiding those tough talks, she warns, leads to disengagement, fear, lack of feedback, stifled creativity. Once you start talking about this stuff, understanding it, it's hard to go back. It changes everything.
This idea of courageous, honest talk, even when it's painful, makes me think of Elie Wiesel. His conviction about confronting hatred, using words.
Absolutely. Weasel, having seen the absolute worst of humanity, had this profound faith in the power of the word and the power of the mind and the power of language and the power of argument to fight hatred. More so than just laws, even.
Really?
More than laws. He felt, maybe hoped, that the ideas of humanity are stronger than the temptations, the seduction of inhumanity. For him, memory itself was a weapon, a form of resistance. He famously said, "Memory is the best vengeance against those who commit atrocities. It ensures the evil isn't forgotten, the victims are remembered. It's about the power of speaking truth, telling the story, maintaining your identity and dignity through words, even against overwhelming darkness."
So we've looked at the theory, from ancient rhetoric to modern vulnerability, and the sort of emotional core of real connection. Let's look at some historical figures who really lived this stuff, who combined that deep inner conviction with effective action, shaping history.
Theodore Roosevelt is a fascinating example. That 1902 coal strike was a massive crisis. The mine owners just dug in their heels, refused to negotiate, basically prioritizing property rights over a looming public disaster.
A winter without coal.
Yeah.
Devastating.
Exactly. Roosevelt saw this public calamity coming, especially for poorer people. So he did something incredibly bold, arguably went beyond his constitutional powers. He basically threatened to send in the army to run the mines if the owners didn't agree to arbitration.
Wow, he forced their hand.
He did. He explicitly said that where property rights infringed on human rights, property would have to give way. It showed this deep commitment to the people's welfare, even though he took huge political heat for it. Wall Street called him a traitor to his class, but he acted on his conviction.
And he wasn't just about forceful domestic action. He also showed a totally different side on the world stage, right? The Nobel Peace Prize often gets overlooked next to the Rough Rider image.
That's so true. In 1905, he mediated the Russo-Japanese War, a brutal conflict, huge loss of life. Japan was near bankruptcy. Roosevelt worked mostly behind the scenes with incredible diplomatic skill.
Not by force this time.
No, patient diplomacy. He brought these warring nations to the table in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and brokered a peace treaty. It earned him the Nobel Peace Prize, the first American to get it. It just shows his range: forceful when needed at home, patient and strategic abroad, but always driven by a core belief in stability and human well-being.
Looking back even further to the founding of the U.S., George Washington's farewell address feels like another powerful example of leadership driven by conviction about the future.
Oh, absolutely timeless. As he's stepping down, he gives this incredible piece of advice. He hammers home that the unity of government is the main pillar of everything: independence, prosperity, peace.
A plea for unity.
A passionate one. He begs citizens to cherish a cordial, habitual, and immovable attachment to it. And he warns so clearly against anything that tries to alienate any portion of our country from the rest. He saw the danger of division, factionalism, regionalism right from the start. It was profoundly selfless guidance for the future.
And when you think about conviction that ignites action, you almost have to mention Patrick Henry. Give me liberty or give me death. Still gives you chills.
Iconic. That speech to the Virginia Convention in 1775, it's pure, impassioned rhetoric fueled by absolute conviction. He was challenging the doubters, the ones still hoping for reconciliation with Britain.
No more waiting.
Exactly. He argued, morally, historically, practically, but the fire came from his appeal to courage. The battle, sir, is not to the strong alone. It is to the vigilant, the active, the brave. He basically said, compromise is slavery. Our chains are forged. The war is inevitable, and let it come. It was this raw assertion of the human spirit demanding freedom, pushing people past fear into action.
So this whole journey of finding your voice, influencing others, acting on conviction, it seems like it inevitably runs up against these deep, often painful societal divides.
Yeah.
Our sources certainly don't ignore this. Progress isn't easy.
No, it's often incredibly difficult and requires immense courage to even address. Barack Obama's 2008 speech, A More Perfect Union, is just remarkable for its honesty about the racial stalemate in America.
Right, he didn't just talk about black anger.
Exactly. He acknowledged the very real anger and legitimate grievances in the black community, absolutely. But crucially, he also spoke directly to what he called a similar anger and resentment in parts of the white community, especially the white working class.
What kind of resentment?
He talked about their immigrant experience, feeling they'd built everything from scratch, worked hard, sacrificed, only to see jobs shipped overseas, pensions disappear. In this tough economic climate, he said, opportunity feels like a zero-sum game. Your gain is my loss.
Okay.
So things like affirmative action or even talk about systemic racism could feel like an attack, like their own struggles were being ignored or dismissed as prejudice. He stressed these feelings were often grounded in legitimate concerns about economic insecurity, about change, and just labeling them racist wasn't helpful. It widened the divide.
And he pointed out how these very real feelings, on both sides, were often manipulated.
Yes, that was a critical, uncomfortable point.
Right?
He argued these genuine fears and resentments were exploited by politicians, by media figures. He mentioned talk show hosts and conservative commentators building careers, unmasking bogus claims of racism while dismissing legitimate discussions of racial injustice as mere political correctness.
Creating a false narrative.
Right. It politicized any discussion of inequality, making it toxic. And, he argued, this whole dynamic distracted attention from the real culprits of the middle-class squeeze, things like corporate practices, special interests in Washington, economic policies that favored the few. Basically, racial division was a useful smokescreen for deeper economic issues affecting everyone.
So what was his proposed path forward? A more perfect union required something from everyone.
Yes, his vision was about shared responsibility and empathy. For the African American community, he said it meant embracing the past's burdens without becoming victims, continuing to demand justice, but also
Also what?
binding our particular grievances to the larger aspirations of all Americans, recognizing that the fight for better schools, better healthcare, secure jobs, these are universal struggles. It was a call for solidarity across racial lines, recognizing linked fates.
That idea of ongoing struggle, of promises unfulfilled, really echoes Martin Luther King Jr.'s imagery in I Have a Dream, doesn't it? Describing the reality a century after emancipation.
King's words in '63 painted such a stark picture. 100 years later, the Negro still is not free. He described Black Americans living on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity, like an exile in his own land. It just powerfully highlighted the gap between America's ideals and the reality of systemic oppression and poverty. It underscored the moral urgency, the unfinished business of freedom.
And if we shift from race to gender, we see a similar long, hard fight against deep-seated inequality. Elizabeth Cady Stanton's Declaration of Sentiments laid it out so clearly back in 1848.
Stanton's declaration is foundational. Using the language of the Declaration of Independence was deliberate, powerful. She just listed, point by point, the repeated injuries and usurpations of men towards women.
Like, what specifically?
Denial of the vote, no voice in laws, no property rights. A married woman was basically civilly dead, legally speaking. Her wages, her inheritance weren't hers. Men monopolized all the good jobs, theology, medicine, law were closed off, and in the few jobs women could get, they earned peanuts. It was this comprehensive indictment of systemic subordination in every part of life.
And amidst that, you had figures like Sojourner Truth, who embodied the fight against both racism and sexism. Her presence must have been incredible.
Absolutely. At that women's rights convention in 1853, she faced this hostile mob. They saw her as embodying, the two most hated elements, Black and female. They hurled insults.
Terrible.
But she stood calm, and she spoke this profound truth. When woman gets her rights, man will be right. How beautiful that will be. Then it will be peace on earth and goodwill to men. Her very presence, her words spoke to this interconnectedness. Justice for one group lifts everyone. Equality isn't taking something away. It's creating a better world for all.
That idea of interconnectedness and the long, steady work of change really brings us to someone like Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Her whole career feels like a masterclass in challenging injustice through the law, sometimes bit by bit.
Justice Ginsburg's career is absolutely a testament to that strategic, persistent challenge from within the system. Her early work, even before the Supreme Court, was often sparked by cases that seemed small but revealed huge inconsistencies. Like the Moritz case.
Tell me about that one.
Mr. Moritz couldn't get a tax deduction for caring for his invalid mother, but a daughter could have. His simple brief basically said, this makes no sense. It highlighted gender discrimination against a man, and that helped the Supreme Court start applying equal protection to gender for the first time. Ginsburg believed in measured motions, slow, steady advances, building the foundation carefully.
But she wasn't always measured, was she? She could write some fiery dissents when she felt the court got it wrong, like in the Ledbetter pay discrimination case.
Oh, absolutely. Her Ledbetter dissent is legendary. The court made this really strict ruling. Lilly Ledbetter had to file her pay discrimination claim within 180 days of each unfair paycheck. even if she didn't realize she was being underpaid for years.
Which is often how it happens, right? It's hidden.
Exactly. Ginsburg blasted that as ignoring real-world employment practices. She famously wrote it created a situation where heads, the employer wins, tails, the employee loses, because the clock often ran out before you even knew you were a victim. She pointedly put the ball in Congress's court to fix it, and they did with the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act, largely thanks to her dissent.
So these deep divides, the long fight for justice, it really raises this fundamental question, doesn't it?
Yeah.
What happens when these problems are ignored or when power, political, corporate, whatever, just goes unchecked?
Kurt Vonnegut had a pretty bleak but maybe realistic take on that. He was blunt. Power corrupts us, and absolute power corrupts us absolutely. He had this dark humor saying, human beings are chimpanzees who get crazy drunk on power.
Ouch. Chimpanzees drunk on power.
Yeah. He felt it led to dehumanization, callousness. He pointed out how soldiers often get treated like toys a rich kid got for Christmas. Their lives, their humanity, just pawns for those in charge. It's a stark warning about what happens when authority isn't checked, when accountability disappears.
It's a disturbing thought. And it kind of echoes Theodore Roosevelt again, but this time his fight against what he called the tyranny of minorities here at home.
Right. And he didn't mean ethnic minorities. He meant small, powerful, special interests. He went after the corporate groups grabbing our coal deposits, our water powers, the ones selling adulterated foods, the monopolies creating social and industrial injustice.
So the tyranny of unchecked corporate power.
Exactly. He saw these self-serving groups as a direct threat to democracy, to the average citizen. He famously insisted a great democracy has got to be progressive, or it will soon cease to be either great or a democracy. For him, it was a constant battle against greed, prioritizing profit over people.
But amidst these warnings about power and division, there's also this persistent hope, isn't there? Especially looking towards younger generations. Tara Grove's graduation speech seems to capture that.
It really does. It's remarkably optimistic, but also challenging. She tells the graduates they are more philanthropic, more tolerant, more balanced, and open-minded than any in living history.
That's high praise.
It is, but it's also setting the bar high. She challenges them. Don't let economic growth become our undisputed master again. She uses that stark phrase, your money or your life, applying it to climate change. Prioritize the planet, human values over just endless consumption. She's basically saying, you have the values, now use them to choose a different path.
And she connects this environmental and economic challenge to an even bigger picture, right? About all these different struggles for justice being linked.
That's her powerful closing idea, an inseparable movement for liberation. She argues that racial caste and sexual caste are intertwined, interdependent, and inseparable. You can't truly be a feminist, she says, without being anti-racist, and vice versa.
Because the underlying structures are the same.
Exactly. The hierarchies, the power dynamics that control women's bodies, maintain racial divisions, they're connected. So the fight for justice can't be split into little boxes. It's one continuous, interconnected effort. Progress in one area helps all others. It's a call for this holistic view, recognizing the work is never really done, and it demands solidarity across all fronts. #outro.
Wow. We have really covered a lot of ground today. From, finding those hidden diamonds in our own lives to the huge sweep of history, societal change, ancient wisdom, modern struggles.
It's quite a tapestry.
It is, but the thread connecting it all seems pretty clear, doesn't it? It's about the power we each have our conviction. It's about the art, the skill, really, of connecting with others authentically. And it's about facing up to that ongoing, interconnected work of building a more just world.
Absolutely. And the real point of digging into all this, we hope, isn't just, intellectual curiosity. It's really a call to action, isn't it? It's about how you, listening right now, choose to face life's challenges and opportunities, as Frankl put it. How you choose to keep learning, to build that inner strength, that contentment Seneca talked about, and how you choose to use whatever influence you have responsibly. Remember Conwell's royal road to great wealth? It wasn't about keeping it all.
Right, it was about sharing.
Exactly. Dividing always with his fellow men, demanding your own rights, but also giving every other person theirs. It's this reciprocal idea, shared prosperity.
And what really hits home for me is how it boils down to our individual choices day by day. Making those choices to, as Vonnegut urged, make this a more rational world, our choices matter.
They really do. So as we wrap up this deep dive, here's the thought we want to leave you with. How will you start to identify and cultivate those acres of diamonds in your own life? The opportunities you've maybe overlooked, the strength you have inside, the unique insights right there, waiting to be used. And maybe more importantly, how will you translate that inner understanding, that conviction, into real, meaningful action? Action that doesn't just enrich your own path, but actively helps bridge the divides, helps foster progress right where you are in your community, in the wider world. How will you make your iron hot?